Say one word and we will sue, Claudia Holloway said, with one finger pressed to the marked page of the prenup, and the first rows already filled behind her. The quartet was playing softly inside the chapel. The doors were cracked just wide enough for me to see white roses candlelight, and a room full of people who thought they were about to watch a marriage. What they were actually about to watch was a family choke on the contract they had written for me. Claudia leaned closer, her perfume cold and expensive. Do not make a scene. Do not embarrass this family. And do not forget what you signed. I looked down at the page under her finger. Non-disparagement. No public statements that could damage the reputation of the Holloway family, its business interests, its executives, or its affiliates. If I violated it, the wedding could be stopped, the settlement package disappeared, and their lawyers could come after me for reputational harm. Then I looked past her shoulder and into the front row. Brielle Kent was sitting where no mistress should ever be sitting, 2 seats from the aisle, right beside one of Ethan Holloway's sponsor guests, and across from his aunt from Boston. She was not tucked in the back. She was not hiding behind some vague work excuse. She was in the front row of my wedding, dressed in pale silk, with the kind of composure that only comes from believing the wife has already lost. Ethan stood near the officiant, one hand at his jacket, calm as a man waiting for a private car instead of vows. He glanced at me, then at his mother, then back at me, and I saw it in a second. He thought I would swallow this. He thought I would walk down that aisle because pride, money, image, and humiliation all work on women like handcuffs if you apply them hard enough. Do not do this today, he said, when he passed close enough for only me to hear. I kept my voice level. I am not saying anything. That was what finally unsettled him. Not anger, not tears. Silence. If you were me in that doorway with the woman your fiance was sleeping with in the front row and his mother holding a lawsuit over your head, would you walk down that aisle, or would you save your name and let the room burn? The answer for me had started a week earlier when I realized I was no longer dealing with an affair. I was dealing with a system. I was 31. I had spent the last 18 months helping Ethan build what every magazine profile liked to call a modern power couple image. His family owned Holloway, living a hospitality and lifestyle group built on luxury hotels, event properties, branded residences, and the kind of polished philanthropy that makes ugly money look noble from a distance. During our engagement, I had been looped into planning guest outreach, sponsor dinners, and the foundation gala that always ran alongside the family wedding season. I was useful, articulate, presentable, and not born into enough power to scare them. In short, I was perfect. I noticed Brielle before I knew what I was seeing. First, her name appeared too often in scheduling threads. Then there was the way Ethan always had a new explanation for why she needed to be at a strategy lunch, a rehearsal planning dinner, a sponsor walkthrough, a pre-wedding tasting. Then there were nights he was supposedly with investors, while the internal car logs showed his driver making hotel pickups that did not match the story I had been given. I still wanted to be wrong. I am honest enough to admit that. When you love someone, you do not leap toward the ugliest explanation first. You inch there, hoping every step proves unnecessary. Then one afternoon I opened the latest seating draft for the ceremony, and saw Brielle placed in the first section under a guest category tied directly to the Holloway family office. I stared at her name until the screen blurred. I called Ethan that night. He answered from the balcony of the penthouse suite, where his family had been hosting a pre-wedding donor dinner. I could hear glassware and low laughter behind him. "Why is Brielle in the front section of our wedding?" I asked. He did not answer right away. Then he did what men like him always do when truth is less convenient than control. He tried to make my reaction the story. "You are exhausted, Delaney. You are reading everything the worst possible way." I asked again, slower this time. "Why is she in the front section?" "She is there because of sponsor alignment and brand visibility," he said. "It is work. This is bigger than your feelings right now." I almost laughed at that. Bigger than your feelings. As if humiliation becomes professional if you expense it correctly. "What work requires your mistress to sit in the front row of your wedding?" I said. He exhaled hard, already irritated that I had named what he wanted left blurred. "Do not say things you cannot prove." That line stayed with me because it told me exactly how he saw this. He was not telling me I was wrong. He was telling me I was dangerous only if I became specific. The next day, Claudia invited me to her suite for what she called a routine update to the prenup. Her attorney was already seated when I arrived. The folder was open, water poured, pens aligned. It all looked civilized, which is how wealthy people prefer to stage violence. Most of the document was familiar. Separate property, inheritance protections, confidentiality, restrictions around media disclosures. Then I turned to the marked addendum and found the new language. No public accusation, commentary, or statement written or verbal that could disparage the Holloway family or materially damage its reputation, relationships, partnerships, or market standing. I read it twice. Claudia folded her hands like a woman discussing floral budgets. "Families at this level require protections, Delaney. We are not only safeguarding personal privacy, we are safeguarding a name. If I see something that is wrong," I asked, "what exactly am I allowed to do?" "You address it privately," she said, like an adult. You do not drag this family through public mud because you are emotional. Her attorney added that the clause was standard for high-profile households. He said standard the way a surgeon might say incision. I should have walked out then. Maybe some women would have. Maybe that would have been cleaner. But clean exits are luxuries. People like Claudia assume they reserve for themselves. I did something better. I let her believe she had frightened me into compliance. I signed. Or rather, I signed the version of myself they thought they had created. Quiet. Managed. Cornered. That night, I sat alone in my hotel room, with my wedding dress hanging against the window like a ghost with good tailoring. My phone kept lighting up with rehearsal images from the planner's chat. Ethan in a tux fitting. Ethan beside sponsor guests. Ethan in the edge of a frame where Brielle was standing just a little too close to count as innocent and just far enough to be defended by cowards. I did not call my friends. I did not cry into a pillow. I did not post a single thing. I opened my laptop and wrote to my own attorney. I understand the non-disparagement clause, I typed. I am not asking how to accuse them. I am asking how to disclose documents I lawfully possess. If I present authenticated records without commentary, where is the line? He replied, faster than I expected. That alone told me I was not the first woman to send a message like that from a bridal suite. You cannot fabricate, embellish, or make reckless factual claims, he wrote. But you may present records that are lawfully in your possession or obtained through files and accounts you were authorized to access. Provided you do not add unsupported commentary beyond what the documents show, displaying documents is not the same thing as making a defamatory statement. Reading authenticated communications and records into the room is not the same thing as inventing them. I sat back and read that twice. They did not fear what I knew, they feared what I could say, so I stopped trying to think of the perfect thing to say. I decided to let the documents speak. The first layer was hotel billing. Because I had been assisting with sponsor logistics and bridal hospitality, I still had access to several planning folders and vendor reporting dashboards that the Holloway team had never bothered to remove me from. Ethan had been careless in the way entitled men always are. Not careless enough to be caught by gossip, careless enough to be caught by records. There were premium suite invoices charged through internal codes meant for executive hosting. There were late check-in logs on nights Ethan had told me he was in strategy meetings. There were driver dispatch sheets showing dual drop-offs. There were private dining charges, spa reservations for 2 minibar extensions, and room service requests that perfectly overlapped with the windows he had called me to say he was working late for our future. I downloaded everything I was authorized to see and cross-referenced dates. The second layer was money. Holloway Living had all sorts of neat little categories for elegant corruption: brand support, creative consulting, guest image retention, event appearance coordination. Brielle did not receive payments under her own name in ways a child could spot. The transfers went to an image consultancy linked to her manager, then to a boutique service account that happened to bill on the exact days Ethan was supposedly buried in wedding meetings and sponsor dinners. That was when the story shifted inside me. This was not just a man cheating. This was a family using corporate structure, hospitality assets, and clean-looking codes to subsidize the lie, while handing me a contract that said I could not embarrass them. The third layer was what turned it from ugly to fatal: emails. Claudia did not write like a woman panicking. She wrote like a woman directing staff. Keep all ceremony side disruptions contained until after the vows. No last-minute guest movement visible to sponsors. No conversation with Delaney outside council present. Keep everything calm until after the weekend. Then we handle whatever needs handling. Not once did she write the word affair. She did not need to. She wrote like a woman managing fallout she fully understood. There were also messages between Ethan and Brielle, not because I hacked anything, but because Ethan had synced portions of his event correspondence to a shared planning device weeks earlier and never logged out of a linked archive. I had been authorized on the device because the rehearsal and donor welcome materials were routed through it. He was arrogant enough to assume I would never go looking, or weak enough to believe the prenup had taken away my nerve. The messages were not romantic in the youthful, foolish sense. They were worse. Practical. Contemptuous. Timing. Room numbers. See you after the walkthrough. She suspects. Let her. After Saturday, none of this matters. Mother says keep everything clean until the ceremony. Mother says. That was my favorite part. When paperwork already knows the truth, does anyone still need a confession? I spent the next night organizing the file like a closing argument without commentary. Exhibit A, suite invoice. Exhibit B, transport and private service charges. Exhibit C, payment flows to the consultancy linked to Brielle. Exhibit D, Claudia's internal email about keeping everything contained until after the vows. Exhibit E, the messages. Exhibit F, the written opinion from my attorney, confirming what I could lawfully present from records in my possession. I did not need all of it. I needed enough of it in the right order to let the room arrive at the truth before anyone could shout me down as hysterical. That is the mistake people like Claudia make. They think truth is weak unless it is dramatic. In reality, truth is strongest when it arrives dry, time-stamped, and printed on letterhead. On the morning of the wedding, I dressed on schedule. Hair, makeup, veil, photographs, all of it. I moved through the bridal suite like a woman who had accepted her place. That was what made them careless. One of my bridesmaids, Nora, caught my hand while the others stepped out. "Are you all right?" I looked at her. Then at the hard white folio tucked beneath the chair where my vow booklet was supposed to go. "I am steady," I said. It was the truest thing I had said in days. Ethan texted once. "Thank you for not making this worse." I read it. I did not answer. Claudia passed through the room about an hour before guests were seated. She looked me over from head to heel, not with warmth, not with pride, but with the private satisfaction of a woman who believes she has successfully domesticated danger. "Beautiful," she said. "Keep your poise, and today ends well for everyone." Everyone in her world meant anyone richer than me. Then the music changed. Ushers moved. Guests settled. And we were back in the doorway with her finger on the prenup and Brielle in the front row like a deliberate wound. "Say one word and we will sue," Claudia repeated softer this time, because she believed repetition becomes reality if a wealthy person says it often enough. I met her eyes. I remember the clause. She took that as surrender. The officiant was about to begin when I stepped forward before my father could start the aisle walk. The musicians faltered. Half the room thought it was a timing issue. The other half knew instantly that something had split. I was holding the white folio in both hands. From the outside, it looked bridal. From the inside, it was a blade. I turned toward the guests, not toward Ethan. "Today," I said, "I am not going to say one unkind thing about anyone in this room. I am not going to accuse anyone of anything. I am only going to read from documents already in my possession. Silence has a sound when money is listening. It sounds like fabric stopping mid-rustle." Ethan took a step toward me. "Delaney." I opened the folio. First, I said, "Invoice for Executive Suite 1612 Lakeshore Grand Thursday. Check-in at 9:19 p.m. Late dining service for 2 private transport. Billed through Holloway Guest Relations. Overnight extension approved under sponsor hosting code." I let that settle for one breath, no more. Then I read the next one. "Private car assignment Friday. 2 pickup locations, 1 drop at the same property, return service after midnight. Spa reservation for 2, attached to the same room number. Supplemental dining charge. Floral courtesy delivery, billed to image support." Someone in the second row shifted hard enough that a chair creaked. I still did not look at Ethan. "Stop," he said. I lifted one page, then another. "I have not said anything about you. I am reading billing records." Claudia stood. "This is inappropriate." I turned 1 inch toward her. "This is paperwork your family paid for." Then I continued. "Transfer record consulting disbursement to Kent Image Advisory. Processed through Holloway Lifestyle Events. Budget coded as brand appearance support. Released 2 days after suite invoice. 1612. Authorized within family office. Spending tier." Brielle's face changed before the room did. Not because shame had finally found her, but because she heard her own name in the architecture of the lie. Ethan started forward again, and this time one of his uncles caught his sleeve, not to help me, but because even he understood how ugly it would look if the groom physically tried to stop the bride from reading documents at the altar. I turned to the next page. Internal email. Sent from Claudia Holloway to senior event staff and council CC. Subject line: weekend handling. Keep all ceremony side disruptions contained until after the vows. No visible guest movement in sponsor rows. No conversation with Delaney outside council present. Keep everything calm until after the weekend, then we handle whatever needs handling. The room lost its last excuse right there, Claudia said sharply. Now this is defamatory. I looked at her fully for the first time. I am not speaking about you. I am reading your email. There is a difference between fury and fear. Fury is loud because it still thinks it can win. Fear goes loud because it has realized it already lost. That was the moment Claudia crossed from one into the other. Ethan said my name again, lower now, like a warning he could still salvage with tone. I moved to the next page. Message archive. Friday, 10:43 p.m. Room is clear. Come after the donor, walk through. Another message, Saturday, 8:12 a.m. She knows something. Reply. Let her. After today, it does not matter. Another message 1 minute later. Mother says keep everything clean until the ceremony. No one gasped. Real money rarely gasps. It goes very still while it recalculates. Then I lifted the final document, the one I had placed at the end for a reason. Written advisory from my counsel, I said. A party subject to a non-disparagement clause may still disclose authenticated records lawfully in her possession, and read those records without embellishment or unsupported commentary. Presentation of documents is not in itself a false statement. Factual records remain factual whether they are comfortable or not. Claudia took 1 step forward. Shut that off. I closed the folder halfway, not all the way. If you like, I said, I can also read the clause you made me sign. The one you thought would keep me from speaking. I am honoring it. I have not called your son unfaithful. I have not called you dishonest. I have not called this family corrupt. I have only read what you billed, what you transferred, what you wrote, and what he sent. Once a whole room can see the lie for itself, do you finish the sentence, or do you let silence do the rest? I let silence do the rest. It moved faster than shouting ever could. One sponsor guest in the front row leaned to his assistant and whispered something urgent. A woman from one of the hospitality partners stood up and slipped out before anyone could speak to her. Brielle stared straight ahead the way people do when they know movement will only make guilt look less composed. Ethan looked like a man who had spent years confusing polish with power and had only now discovered the difference. The officiant closed his book. That sounds soft leather meeting hard palm was the cleanest death bell I have ever heard. Claudia tried one last angle. You are destroying this family. I held the folder against my waist and shook my head. No. I stopped protecting it. Then I gave them the only ending they had earned. You asked me not to say one word against you, I said. I kept that promise. I did not say one word. I let the documents speak. No one stopped me as I turned away. Not Ethan. Not Claudia. Not my bridesmaids. Not the guests who had just watched a wedding become evidence. I walked back down the aisle without taking it. That was the part I loved most. They had arranged the ceremony around movement toward a man. I used the same aisle to move away from him. Behind me, chairs scraped. Staff murmured. Someone called for counsel. Someone else asked the musicians to hold. The room sounded like expensive machinery jamming all at once. Outside, the air felt shockingly plain. No string quartet, no roses, no stage lighting, just ordinary afternoon light and the sudden relief of not having to protect a lie bigger than my own pain. Nora caught up to me at the side entrance. She did not ask if I was all right this time. She had seen enough to know that all right was too small a word. Did you plan all of that alone, she asked. Mostly, I said. The truth did help. She laughed once in disbelief more than humor, then started crying, which made me love her for at least telling the truth with her face. By evening, the guest clips had already started circulating privately, not because I leaked them. I did not have to. Wealthy people are worse than tabloids when they think they just witnessed a protected dynasty crack in public. By the next morning, event partners were pausing announcements. A lifestyle sponsor quietly delayed a campaign with Ethan. A hospitality columnist posted a careful item about a ceremony halted after documented disclosures. By the next trading session, analysts were suddenly interested in governance, leadership optics, and discretionary spending discipline across Holloway living. Nothing destroys a curated family image faster than records that show the family knew exactly what it was covering. Ethan called me 7 times. Then he sent messages that moved through the full coward cycle. Anger, minimizing, nostalgia, blame, pleading. He said I had overreacted. He said Brielle meant nothing. He said his mother had handled things badly. He said I should have confronted him privately. He said I had humiliated him. That word almost made me smile. Humiliation was what he gave me when he seated his mistress in the front row and expected me to walk toward him anyway. I did not respond. Claudia only sent one message. You will regret the market consequences of this. I forwarded it to my attorney and archived the thread. That afternoon, he sent back a note that was shorter than the first one. Continue not commenting. Let them be the ones who speak emotionally now. You are safest in the truth you already laid down. That was the beauty of it. The family had spent days trying to control the language. Once the documents were public inside the room, language stopped belonging to them. Guests interpreted. Partners withdrew. Writers wrote. Analysts speculated. Sponsors hesitated. I did not need to attack them. I had already removed the one thing they counted on most. My silence in service of their reputation. A week later, the dress was still hanging in a garment bag in the back of my closet. I thought I would hate the sight of it. I did not. It had become proof of something useful. A woman can walk right up to the edge of public humiliation and still choose not to disappear inside it. People ask when they hear the story now, if I ruined my own wedding day. No. They ruined it when they built a ceremony around deceit and assumed I would decorate it with obedience. What I ruined was their confidence. I ruined the fantasy that a legal clause could turn me into a witness for their lie. I ruined the lazy little belief that if they gave me enough shame, enough pressure, enough silk, enough flowers, enough fear of looking dramatic, I would protect them from the truth. They were wrong. They wrote a contract meant to choke me quiet. In the end, it taught me exactly how to speak without giving them a word to sue. If stories like this are your kind of justice, stay with this channel. And if you ever find yourself standing in white with a lie arranged in the front row, remember this. Silence is not surrender when you are holding the file.